Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Podcast. We are back again with more questions for one another.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Good to be back with you, sir.
I know.
We ended off last episode not completing all of the original questions, so we want to jump back in, kind of part two here, and address some of these questions from the previous episodes. So I know that you had asked me a couple of questions. I had asked you a question about, are billionaires good for business? You said yes.
Yeah.
I had asked you, do you approve, do you support cop killers?
I said no.
Thankfully, you said no. Mm-hmm. And what did you have for me?
On a previous episode, I did ask you about this robotics thing that the CEO of Robotics is working on. Prototype that should potentially become a life companion, and you were with maybe drifting towards
a life companion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so for us to dive into this, I have one more question to round up my own two questions for this episode. Okay. But before I ask you this question, I'm going to need to unpack some data for you and the audience. I need to give you guys a brief context of what is happening before I can ask you this question. It's a current matter between America and South Africa. So I don't know if you're familiar with the apartheid regime of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, South Africa went through this apartheid era where the South Africans, the people from South Africa, the indigenous people from South Africa, they were not able to have any political power in South Africa or any economic power.
Right.
So because of this, there was a struggle in South Africa, and then there was the rise of Nelson Mandela, who was able to bring South Africa to gain some control over their own country, South Africans. So what happened was, one of the mistakes Nelson Mandela did, I like to call it a mistake, because it is something that he should have considered when he was fighting for the people of South Africa, is he never really thought about the economy. He fought for the political power in South Africa. He gave the black South Africans a political voice, but he never really gave them economic, any form of economic power in South Africa. So most of the land in South Africa is still owned by white immigrants to South Africa. The Europeans are settled in South Africa.
Right.
They are South Africans now, but they own most of the land. So here are some statistics for you and for the audience before I get to my question. I'm really sorry. I just need to give you this data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So according to, give me a second here. So according to Department of Royal Development and Land Reform in South Africa, white South Africans are about 7.3% of the country, but they own 70% of the land in South Africa. Then Africans, they own 5% of the land, even though the Africans are over 80% of the country. They own only 5% of the land. Then other ethnic groups, colored, own 15%. Then Indian, Asian, they own 6%. So because of this, South Africa have always been off the balance, because these people, it was initially their country before, during the time, the transatlantic slave period. White people migrated from Europe and they settled in South Africa.
Sure.
So this current regime in South Africa has been working to make sure that they can evenly distribute this land among all South Africans. Mm-hmm. But our president, Donald Trump, he doesn't like that idea. So he has placed sanctions on South Africa because of this. Do you think that America should be interfering in South Africa?
No. South Africa obviously has their own leadership. So on a particular South African policy like this, it makes no sense for Trump to be stepping in. I mean, back to the time of Mandela, right? When Mandela eventually regained, or I should say gained power within South Africa after being held in prison, actually, for many, many years. That's a complicated thing, right? Yeah. It's one thing, for the African people of South Africa to gain their freedoms and their legal rights. It's a completely other beast to then have to try to go and take land and resources from one group and give it to another, and that, as you can imagine, gets incredibly complicated and very different decision, but not to equate it to what goes on in Israel and the Middle East, but can cause a great deal of problems to take land from one group and give it to another. And so not the same exact scenario in South Africa, obviously, but you can see why Mandela was not likely able to just accomplish that with one fell swoop after gaining power, to just say, okay, now we're going to, as a new African leader, for him to say, okay, now we're just going to take all the land from the white people and give it, it's not that simple, obviously. There are, I'm sure, people who, have rightfully owned and maintained their land, and especially now in this current era, families who have been there for generations and generations. So it's very complicated, but it's similar to the situation we have in the United States, where, we've discussed this on this program as well. Reparations are important in some form because people and families of color have been in this country for centuries and have been, post-slavery and all of that, have been very intentionally kept down, and it's been written, whether it was written in laws, which in some cases it was written in laws that people of color could not own land. This has kept them out of power for so long, and it's kept the balance of power in the hands of the white majority. And so there do have to be legal changes made if you want to ever overcome that somehow. And so it's necessary here in the United States, certainly necessary in South Africa as well.
I like the fact that you kind of related the situation in South Africa somehow to what is happening in Gaza, because ever since this war in Gaza started, most South Africans are fully in support of Gaza, of Palestinians in Gaza. Yeah, because their situation is very similar to theirs.
Sure.
Now, like you rightly stated, these people now, this land they own is not like this. On paper now, it doesn't really say this land was stolen or forcefully taken. They now legally own this land. But just this tiny fraction, 7.3% of the country owning 70% of that land.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Of course, yeah.
So even if we want to fix this, how do you think we can go about it in a way that we don't hurt the 7.3%? Because at the end of the day, those people are South Africans now.
Sure.
They have the same rights in South Africans as the black people, and they stay there. It is their home. So how can we go about maybe getting this 7.3% to maybe give some of the land, just maybe a portion back to the South Africa, so that they can be able, because let's be honest, the only way you can be able to build generational wealth is if you own properties like land.
Yeah.
So that we can fix this imbalance in South Africa. What do you think we should do?
No, and that's exactly true. And that's the exact reason why in the United States, white-controlled government has long prevented black people in this country from even having the right to own land. It was the case even that if you didn't own land at some point in our history, you couldn't vote if you didn't own land. And so it's been an intentional tactic of keeping black people out of power and out of financial power as well. And so I want to raise this point specifically because, it gets into other current political issues that we're having in the United States, and that can relate to what's going on also in South Africa.
Oh, it's relating.
And so, with Trump's administration coming in, for example, he's looking to he actually signed an executive order to immediately end all diversity, equity, inclusion programs, which is the DEI that we've been hearing so much about. And so there's a misunderstanding about what these laws are, but they are laws that give equal access, because there's never been equal access. So it would be one thing if there were many different people in this country of different races and everyone was exactly equal and had been throughout history. That's never been the case, obviously, right? There's never been equality in this country. As I mentioned, there have been very intentional ways that folks in power have ensured that minorities and people of color do not gain power by literally putting it in laws or funding certain white neighborhoods over black neighborhoods. It's always been intentional. And so the purpose of a program like DEI ensures equal access. And it's also a program that is not exclusive to minorities, but it provides access to people like military veterans, other people. And now you have Trump coming in and just ending this. And what that does is not create equality whatsoever. It further enables those in power to discriminate and suppress the people who have less from gaining more. And so, I mean, it's in the case of South Africa, it's very essential that this has been obviously a generations-long suppression. And in order to reverse suppression, there has to be legal things in place. I mean, because otherwise, obviously, people with the power and with the wealth are not just going to willingly hand it over, right? So, and that isn't to say you should pass a law that says these people have to give all their land away. That's not the point.
It wouldn't be fair to those people either. So yes, I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Ben. Continue.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to. These laws are in place so that they create opportunity.
Okay.
And that's what I don't know the political system in South Africa well, but that would be the ideal way to approach it. Is you create opportunity for that 70%, as you mentioned, that make certain lands available to them. Of that, the other, like you said, what was it, 7%?
Yeah, it's 7.3% of South Africans are Caucasian, and they own 70% of the land.
Yeah, there has to be some kind of deal made where, they're willing to some of the lands that are less maintained or whatever, that they need to start handing those over to and providing those to the rest of the population to make use of those, because I mean, South Africa's a massive country, right? I mean,
it's probably one of the most important countries in the world, anyways. Yeah, so it's a massive country.
Yeah. So again, I'm not expert in South African politics at all, but it's less about taking one thing from one person and giving it to another, and more about creating opportunity for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the importance. Again, bringing it back to what's happening in the U.S. That's the really essential thing about having programs like diversity, equity, inclusion, is that it's not taking away anybody's rights. What it's doing is providing opportunity to those who have never had it in this country, and they've never had it because of intentional suppression by the people who have wealth and power, and that goes all the way back to slavery. I mean, we built wealth and power in this country off of the backs of Black African Americans, and since that time have made sure that they've never gained any power, even after slavery ended. But it's not like then they all just had homes and land that they could use, right? They were prevented from ever having those things. So the suppression has never ended, and the laws were there to try to prevent this suppression that's ongoing. And now that Trump's removing them, it allows the most powerful people to continue abuse the system.
Okay, all right. I hear you. Have you ever heard of this guy, Robert Mugabe?
Yes.
Yeah. The reason I'm not a huge fan of maybe any laws that would forcefully make the 7.3% release their land is because we have already seen this happen in Zimbabwe with Robert Mugabe. It was a similar case there where the few Caucasians that were settled there and called it their home, they owned most of the land. These people were farmers. They knew how to farm the land really good. So one of the mistakes Mugabe did was he went in there and he took the land from them and gave it to black Zimbabweans.
Sure.
But now the mistake there was these black Zimbabweans were not really experts in farming. So now we had these people that were experts in farming, they didn't have the land. So the lands were just standing there and nobody was farming them. Then all the economic sanctions from the United States of America on them and all of that, there were no aid packages going there. So the country went through a very rough patch. Even though they survived, but they went through a rough patch. So it is not something I would want to happen in South Africa because I've already seen a case study. We have already seen it happen to a country really close to South Africa. So I think it's a situation where that media outlets like ours here that are independent should encourage these two parties to come together, understanding that it is all of their nation. The whites and the blacks, they all own South Africa now. They need to come together and figure out a way to actually be able to give the black people some land, because 7.3% owning 70% of the land, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's not going to be good for the overall economy even. I mean, if you think about it.
I was going to state that shortly here, because it says that 10% of South Africans, the wealthiest, which of course, in that 10%, over 80% of them are white. They control 90% of the economy in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. These people live in Cape Town. They're extremely rich. Then the rest of the South Africans scramble over the little scraps that are left on the table. So they need to figure out a way to coexist and figure out a way to even that plane even a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think as Americans, Trump should probably focus on the affairs of America, or even if he's to interfere in South African policies, maybe we should be figuring out a way to get those two groups to work together?
I mean, yeah. If anything, pardon me, if Trump's going to be interfering in affairs across the globe, you would think it would be for, the benefit of the larger populations. Mm-hmm. And so I can't possibly imagine a reason other than prejudice for wanting to interfere with South African policy just to prevent African people from gaining resources. Mm-hmm. It's not, that's not United States morals. That's not our, not how we should operate ever. Okay. And that it goes along with what we discussed in the previous episode of cutting, the U.S. aid.
Yeah, he also cut that from South Africa, and also some economic sanctions on South Africa. I think it was yesterday. I know before this episode comes out, it will be a week later, but it was yesterday that he did that. So yeah, he did that, and the people of South Africa, they are not really taking it lightly, because the president of South Africa said Donald Trump should keep his America, that they will keep their South Africa for them. Also, another thing that I would say here is I haven't seen the fine prints of the laws that South Africa has set in place to help with this situation, because this is a problem.
Sure.
Yeah, I haven't seen the fine prints. So I would still do more research on this and see exactly what the South African government wanted for the white South Africans to do, so that the black South Africans should get more.
Yeah.
But if in those fine prints, right, if it's something like you will forcefully give your land, then I'm not going to be in support of that either.
Well, it's 100% about implementation.
Okay.
Something like that is going to be very difficult to implement, obviously, especially when it comes to people of great wealth, like you mentioned. They're not going to willingly give up their power and their wealth and their control. So something like that is just, it's very, very tricky, and it can, redistribution of wealth
delicate situation
will become one of the most controversial things in any government, because then they'll call it socialism. They'll attack it in every possible way. The rich like being rich, obviously, right?
Nobody wants to give up. If somebody has $1 billion, they want to keep that billion. They don't want to lose 10 million.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it'd be very complicated. So yes, I agree. I mean,
Africa, Ben, it's a very beautiful country.
I've heard.
I'm hoping that maybe towards the end of the year or beginning of 2026, we can make it to Zimbabwe, then go there for those political interviews.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very beautiful country. I hope that maybe soon we can get to talk to students at the University of Cape Town anyways.
Yeah. We'll bring Unfiltered to Cape Town.
Yeah.
And we'll be there on the ground and see what the people of South Africa
with the people there, right,
are feeling.
But I think the division in South Africa is something that people don't really talk much about. Maybe it's because it's an African country, but it's a very beautiful African country. Mm-hmm. Cape Town is on the top 10 most beautiful cities in the world every year. But the division there it's catastrophic.
Sure.
It is more than it is here in America. Whites are over there, black people are over here. Mm-hmm. It's separate into two. They can't just coexist. And now the whites own all the money and the wealth. Then the blacks are over there with nothing. So it is leading to we're seeing waves of crime in South Africa. The rate of crime rates in South Africa just keep going up every year. Cities like Johannesburg, people would just call it now a domyard. A place that used to be one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Joburg. It's just full with criminals. Are you going to blame them? These are youths that don't have work. They don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
They have to survive somehow. They have to eat. Now, the country is not exactly poor. It is very rich. And they turn around and they see these few people that live in these gated communities away from the rest of the population, controlling everything, and then turning around and telling them that they are lazy. It's pissing the South African youth up, and they don't know how to manage these emotions. So they are taking the emotions out on other African nations. For example, Nigeria. When Nigerians move from Nigeria, they visit South Africa. You've heard of xenophobia. How South Africans treat foreigners. They don't like foreigners. It's because they don't even have it. But it is there, but they don't have it. They don't know how to manage those emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the result of oligarchy in any country, nation around the world. I mean, it's literally, we can literally compare it to like, if you know the most powerful, wealthy people have their way, they're going to consolidate all the wealth and all the resources.
Yeah.
And if they're allowed to do that, they will, which is what's so terrifying about the current situation in the U.S. with all the most prominent billionaires in this country working closely with Trump's administration, at which, look, people of influence have always worked in some way with the government, but this is to a much more extreme level. They literally have access directly to the President of the United States. And so the only thing that keeps us from becoming basically Gotham City, where it's just some billionaires and then everyone else is struggling and suffering, the only thing that prevents that is having government regulations in place that prevent the most powerful and wealthy people from doing whatever they want, and just at the expense of everybody else, taking all the resources, forcing, monopolizing every last avenue of business, and forcing all of us to rely on them. And we've discussed this many times on this show. I mean, the wealth gap continues to grow. The middle class is disappearing.
It's shrinking to nothing.
And so what the end result of that is that there's a few select people at the very top and the rest of the people living in poverty.
That's almost where South Africa is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the U.S. is going to be.
That's where South Africa is, because the average South African is not that rich.
Yeah.
But they're extremely rich people in South Africa. I don't know you even. This is a place that I need me and you to make it like one of the top 2 countries we visit in Africa. Yeah.
Let's go.
It's a very beautiful country, but way too many poor people. So yeah. So from a perspective of a smart observer from outside the South African economy, what advice will you give to South Africans, both the white and the black, so that they can build a beautiful country for themselves? Because they have all the resources there. They have the power.
Well, nobody wins in an oligarchy. I mean, the top 0.1% might win and get to, bask in their wealth while they're during their life on this earth. But look, at the end of the day, that everyone is eventually going to live in a wasteland. And so nobody wins when majority of any population is in poverty. That creates chaos, and it also creates rebellion. So that's what I would caution to the people of South Africa, and honestly, at this point, to the people of the United States. When we're already seeing it in small examples, right? The assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, that's an act of rebellion.
Absolutely.
Because we're seeing the most powerful people in this country taking advantage at the expense of everybody else. They're forcing, the very concept of insurance, right? We're required to have insurance, to pay for this insurance every single month. It comes out of our paychecks, right? And then when it comes time for us to actually put that insurance, that insurance that's costing us, when it's finally time to put that to use and actually support us for a medical need, then those companies are trying to avoid paying out to support our medical needs. And so this is, it's corporate takeover at its worst, where they have the power to do that, and it can only get worse if the government is not stepping in and making sure that there's rules, that there's regulations. And so yeah, Trump's administration has made very clear they're pulling all of those regulations back. They're eliminating that, and we have now, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, with seemingly unfettered access to the U.S. government and the U.S. budget, which we discussed, somewhat in the previous episode. And so this is a recipe for a disaster. So I would absolutely support if in South Africa they're looking at ways to combat that, to combat the wealth gap and the the horrible class system that's in place there that I've heard so much about.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I hope that they're successful in implementing some ideas.
Trump is interfering. I haven't seen the fine prints of these laws. Maybe he might have a point when we start looking at the fine prints, which is something that I'm gonna try to do this week. So that when we come back on our next episodes, maybe we can have some data to give more context on this. But Trump is interfering. He's putting all these sanctions on them to stop them from trying to to redistribute land among everybody in South Africa. Again, if they're gonna forcefully take the land, then I'm not gonna be in support of that.
Sure.
Because that also it creates a very huge problem. Because these people, this land was given to them by their own ancestors. They've legally owned the land. How their ancestors acquired the land doesn't matter to them right now. To them, they're just seeing a big injustice being done to them if we forcefully try to take the land from them. So at the end of the day, it's all about the policies, like you said, and it's a very delicate matter.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it leads, that conversation leads somewhat into one of the questions I have for you.
Okay.
Which is, are billionaires good for business?
Yeah.
You said yes.
Yes.
We can kick off this conversation. I do have a video for you to watch.
Okay.
That can help kickstart this discussion.
Okay, let me see. I think you sent the video in here. All right, it is the 45-second video.
Sam, can you just going to startups? I mean, as you know, we've got a very vibrant startup ecosystem in India. Specifically focused on AI, are there spaces where you see, let's say, a startup from India building, you can build on the models, be it ChatGPT and many others. But if you want to build foundational models, how should we think about that? Where is it that a team from India, 3 super smart engineers with, not 100 million, but let's say 10 million, could actually build something truly substantial?
Look, the way this works is we're going to tell you it's totally hopeless to compete with us on training foundation models. You shouldn't try, and it's your job to, try anyway. And I believe both of those things. I think it is pretty hopeless, but...
Okay.
So I should give some context to that, obviously.
Yes, please.
Sam Altman was the one answering that question. A startup company asked him if they should try to create their own, basically create their own AI startup. Sam Altman is the CEO of ChatGPT. So, one of the very powerful people working to monetize AI. And as you and I have sort of discussed, AI is going to create trillions for whoever, in the market are able to monetize AI. And obviously the most powerful companies are already all over it. I mean, you have Apple, you have Google, everyone is
not only companies, countries too.
Yeah. But the reason I play this video, right, is because Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT's response to this question of whether companies should try to compete in the market and create AI versions of their own or resources. Mm-hmm. And his response was to say it's hopeless to compete with us. And he said it in kind of a funny way, but he then also said, and that I actually do believe that. And specifically, you may have heard in that video the guy saying, say we have $10 million instead of 100 million. Mm-hmm. And so imagine the levels. And he's coming from the perspective of a startup, this guy who's asking the question. And 10 million is still not enough to compete with those at the very, very top. If you have $10 million and still can't compete, imagine how just impossible it is for any of us entrepreneurs anywhere to try to make it on our own. And so I asked you the question, are billionaires good for business? I asked that question because what we see in the most powerful, wealthy billionaires in this country is deliberately eliminating opportunities for entrepreneurs at every possible outlet that they can. And it's not only what they're doing, it's the entire business model, right? And you can look at any major corporation and how they do this, but just to give a couple examples, Starbucks, their entire game is market saturation. So they'll go into a city and they'll strategically place Starbucks stores within blocks of each other around a local coffee shop just to run that local coffee shop out of business. And so their game is to crush local small businesses and to become the only coffee. Their coffee sucks too, which is unfortunate. Amazon, right? The biggest corporation in the world right now. They pretend to be supporters of small business, but what they really do is they monitor anybody who's using their platform. And if there's something that's selling successfully, they'll just steal it, right? And so they'll take the idea and put that company out of business. And so I asked the question because it seems like monopolizing, those billionaires, if you're a billionaire, you've done so by monopolizing an industry, monopolizing it, I should say. You've done so by taking over a market and eliminating competition. That's the only way to get to the level of billionaire wealth. And so do you think we can survive as entrepreneurs if billionaires like Elon Musk are dominating the market?
I absolutely believe we can. Absolutely. Here's the thing. It's just going to take you longer, and you just have to develop a more tougher skin. However, I don't think that it should be their duty to make the market easy for us that are trying to grow. As I sit here talking to you right now, I'm someone that's trying a lot, and you know. And at the same time, I'm very interested in tech, but I don't have the funds to get into tech. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way up to get the money to compete with AI and technology. That's something I will end up in. But I don't expect a CEO like, what was his name? Altman?
Sam Altman.
So Sam Altman. I don't expect Sam Altman not to tell me to quit now. He should tell me to quit. Because if you want to survive in the game, you have to try to eliminate your competition in the most legal way and direct way that you can. It is not a crime to tell a competition to quit. Yeah, but you as the competition, what you shouldn't do is let people tell you when to quit and not to quit. That's not how it works in business. You should develop a tougher skin, strategize, and come back over and over until you win.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not an excuse to give up.
Morally, is it morally right that a CEO that big would sit down and tell someone that's just trying to start up to quit? No, it is not morally. But again, you don't have to. You don't have to be nice. You don't have to. What he said wasn't illegal. What they're doing is not illegal. You went on Amazon and you started marketing your product there. If Amazon sees that this product is selling, they will also, for them to copy the exact business model, that's not a problem. It's not illegal in this country, is it? It's legal. If I see you selling this and it's really selling, I can be like, oh, damn, that's selling. Then I can open a similar shop to that. And if I have more money than you and I have more resources and I crush you, morally is wrong. But legally, it is, you can do it. So,
yeah. And the reason it relates to the previous question that I asked is because we're talking about the U.S. literally devolving into an oligarchy, where those people who have consolidated this insane amounts of wealth by monopolizing businesses now literally infiltrating the government. And so that's where it gets really scary, right? If the only thing that makes capitalism work, as we've discussed, is a government being able to regulate and make sure that the most powerful people can't just screw over and take advantage of those with less resources.
Yeah, they should not. And I agree with you. What did I tell you? I told you that I don't think Elon Musk being in DC this much and these billionaires is a very good idea, because I feel like the government should definitely work with billionaires because they have more money and they employ more people. Because billionaires generally they employ way more people than the governments do. So I think they should work hand to hand, but they should not be responsible. They should not be around policy making. They should not be around that. And if they are being around that, I think we should be taking it up with our lawmakers. That's what I always say. We should be taking it up with them. We should be looking at who is in DC representing us, not the billionaires. Because if I as a billionaire right now, if I know that if you were a congressman and I'm a billionaire and I know that if I get close to you, I'll gain some favors. Why won't I do it? I'm a businessman. I want to gain favors. But it is up to you as a congressman to look at me and tell me that, no, I'm here to serve the people. Sorry, you cannot buy me. Sorry, you cannot influence me. Yeah, I would never blame the billionaire for that. Never. Also, now, when you ask me about if billionaires are good for business, I'm from a country where we don't have much billionaires. Cameroon doesn't have billionaires. I don't even think we can count 2 billionaires in Cameroon in dollars. I don't even think we have one in dollars, to be honest. Yeah. We don't have jobs either. Those two are they are related to one another. More billionaires, more job opportunities for the average man. Less billionaires, less job opportunities. This is economics 101. You can always look into any system anywhere. Nigeria has a few billionaires. They have more job opportunities in Nigeria, but their population is too much that it's still disturbing the country. For example, the richest black man in the world, Aliko Dangote, how many people have he employed across Africa? Thousands. Tens and tens of thousands. So when you see a society where the government is the only one responsible for job opportunities, it is pure chaos. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I would counter that with the fact that, look, this is not an argument against capitalism at all. Capitalism is what created the most powerful economy in the world in the United States, and what helped build the U.S. was the first country to really have a middle class of people that, like we've mentioned, of people working in various industries and being able to make a livable wage and provide for their families and all of this. That's what's considered a middle class. You know, people who can work, buy homes, and live a comfortable life on a livable wage. And that was created by capitalism. So it's not an anti-capitalism message.
Okay.
But it is the message here is that no, not all of these people were working for billionaires. And what we see, as we were just discussing in the examples of South Africa and the United States now, is the richer these billionaires get, the poorer everybody else gets. And so they're not boosting the economy. What made this economy the strongest in the world is that these, the people who were benefiting off of the system were paying back into that system. We've discussed this, I think, on the show before. Yeah. But the more power they get, the less they're going to want to put back into the system that made them wealthy.
The problem here that I'm seeing when it comes to this topic, right, this is the problem. I think the middle class in America is disappearing because our lawmakers stop paying attention to things like the cost of living that is constantly going up, and the wages that these companies are paying us back. That is not for the companies to decide. It's for our lawmakers to set the minimum wage the right way so that you can still be able to work your regular job and be able to survive and still strive.
Yeah.
This is up to our lawmakers. Now, when I talk about how billionaires are important for every economy, I'm talking because I'm from an economy with no billionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are no jobs. What happens is this: as you sit right here, if you start producing something and you start selling and you start getting to a billionaire status, what is going to be happening is, as you grow, you're going to be employing more people. And when we have like 10 of you guys in an economy, that's a lot of job opportunities. Even if the jobs don't pay the people much to survive, those are jobs. Go to a place where there are no billionaires, they don't even earn $1. They don't earn nothing. They're just sitting at home. Graduates in Cameroon are sitting in the streets because everybody is depending on the government to give them jobs. That's one of the biggest things that killing Africa. We need to industrialize Africa, bring private investors to build their companies in Africa, because I don't care how much you get rich off that. All I know is you're going to employ hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, I mean, so
the government now needs to intervene when you're employing those people and make sure that you're paying them a livable wage.
Yeah, and right now the government in the U.S. is doing the opposite of that.
That's why I say we should blame our lawmakers at the end of the day.
Business and government are always intertwined. There's no untangling that completely. But yes, to keep harping on this point, the reason it's so terrifying to see the richest men infiltrating the government to the level that they are, with Musk literally working in the administration with a massive conflict of interest because he makes billions from government contracts, as I mentioned. This is going in the absolute opposite direction of what you just described, right?
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's
what I said.
Government intervention.
Someone like Elon, right?
Yeah.
We should not be holding him accountable. We should not be blaming him. Because he's just...
The point isn't blaming him, it's blaming the administration.
Thank you. That was the point I was trying to get to. You should not let people like that get to the point where they are making policies for the country. Why is a billionaire making policies for the country?
Yeah.
That's my question. Even someone, I'm the biggest fan of capitalism. The first time I stepped into in America, I saw these billionaires. I knew that one day I'll be one of them. Yeah, you get it? I know that was where I'm trying to get to. And I'm still working day and night to get to the billionaire status.
It's important to remember that what created the possibility even of a billionaire existing is the economy that was built, that was in place to allow them to get to that level of wealth. And so no billionaire in this country or any other has gotten there without using the local resources of the country.
Absolutely.
They driving their trucks on the roads that the government built.
Not only that. The government policies that help them do this, government contracts that help them do this. And that's why, again, when you look at Cameroon like a case study, a country with no billionaires, that there are no job opportunities for the people, right? One thing you see is the government is in the way. When you go to Cameroon and you try to build a business, you're not that free. The government is in the way. It's blocking you from building that business. And that's what is keeping Cameroonians from getting richer and building more businesses and employing people.
Right.
So yes, it always starts with the government. So that's what I always agree with you, that we should be able to look at the cost of living today, house rent, groceries prices, medical bills, and be able to turn around and tell these massive corporations like Apple, like Amazon, that no, this money you pay these people per hour is not livable with. We have to figure out a way to put it up.
Yeah.
Because people now cannot live on this salary. Don't forget, is it 1950, 1960? You could just work at Amazon if Amazon did not exist. But yeah, let's just use Amazon as an example. You could just work at Amazon and be able to have a big family, own a house, own these things. It's not practical today.
No, and
so it's directly to our government, actually.
The root of inflation, though, is a deeper issue as well.
Yeah.
Because the reason that we are all struggling to afford is because as the general population gets poorer and poorer and is still expected to pay the taxes back to the government, the most wealthy are avoiding paying taxes back to the government. So that's the biggest portion of wealth not contributing back to the system that made them wealthy.
They don't pay back to pay taxes.
So I want to be very clear
that,
if money is not being invested back into the government and into the economy that made these people billionaires, then it's a very crooked system. It's an oligarchy, like I said, where the wealth just get to consolidate wealth at the expense of everybody else.
Yeah.
And continue monopolizing and controlling.
We are in the tax
all
system
the
right
industries.
now. We're in the tax period right now, right, Ben?
Yes. Tax season.
I'm gonna be paying back the government a lot of money this year.
A lot of money back to the government.
Here's the
I
thing.
bet Elon Musk doesn't pay anything.
Here's the thing. I'm not mad that Elon is not paying. And I'm not mad that the gentleman that made $700,000 this year bought a car that was almost $100,000 is not paying. Who I'm mad at right now is the government. It has nothing to do with Elon. If they take advantage of the system and they don't pay these taxes, it has nothing to do with it. You as the lawmaker, you that we elect up there, it is your duty to make sure that me that I'm just trying to get by, I don't get to pay this much taxes, and whoever is a billionaire already don't pay anything. I'm never going to blame a billionaire for that. I always blame the lawmakers.
Yeah, but the issue we have now is that we can't even tell the difference.
That's the problem. They're standing too close together.
Yes, these groups are working hand in hand, and that's not brand new. I mean, we've had corporate interests infiltrating the government for years and years, but never to this extreme.
I don't know. It's surprising to me that you haven't brought this up. I don't think you saw it. Have you been following the little scandal that's happening down in Texas, where those two billionaire brothers, I don't know if they're in land or is in oil and gas, someone is accusing one of those congressmen. I'm still going to do more research on it and bring you more videos and more data on this. He's accusing them of infiltrating both the Democratic and Republican side of the Texan government. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's saying that they have infiltrated the government and they're paying a lot of government officials to work with them. Now, in a situation like that, I kind of blame the billionaires a little bit, because you should not be doing that. Ethically, you should not be doing that. But for the most part, I blame the government officials, because you are there for the people. We gave you the job. Do the job. Why are you letting somebody come and pay you not to do the job?
Yeah, it's corruption. It's clear-cut corruption.
Yeah.
And that's, it is the exact same thing that Elon Musk is doing as well. I mean, that's corrupt because he has, like I mentioned, a conflict of interest there. He's gets billions in government contracts, and now has the access to control where money is going from our federal government.
That should not be happening. And if that is happening, again, like I say, I see a lot of people in the media space blaming Elon. Elon is that, Elon is that. You're blaming the wrong guy.
Sure.
Focus on our lawmakers.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, it was 100% Trump who brought Elon Musk in. I mean, that's the reason Elon Musk is there, is because Trump is kind of a puppet to the ultra wealthy. I mean, look, as we've said, Elon Musk was a Democrat in the past. He supported actually Obama, I believe, previous, or I think he even supported Biden originally. But it's just, for him, obviously, it's just a matter of his own interests, and so he's going to manipulate whoever he can. Yeah. And I don't know. Even as someone who didn't vote for Trump, I could never have imagined Trump getting manipulated to this level, where he's putting someone into the federal government.
Like I'm saying, when it comes to this tax system, all of this, Trump is one man, Elon Musk is one man. It comes all the way down here. I'm paying state taxes this year. Minnesota is a progressive state, like you always said, but I'm paying a lot of state taxes this year. All I'm saying is the whole system. It has nothing. Trump is one man, Elon is one man. Donald Trump will leave office in 4 years, and this will not still change after he leaves.
Well, it's interesting.
The same like that, because it's everywhere. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the amount of state taxes I'm going to pay this year, even though I know that there are people in this very state that made over $700,000 this year, and they're not going to be paying that much in taxes. I'm livid, and this has nothing to do with Trump or Elon. It's just the system.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. There's ways around it, more and more so. But in terms of state tax, like you said, that is unique to where you are. We happen to be in one of the most progressive states in the country, and so actually, Minnesota has a history of taxing the ultra wealthy, and that's why we're able to fund some of the best schools in the country.
And I'm still able to pay this much taxes in this state. That's why I brought Minnesota.
No, we all in Minnesota. Look, we all pay a lot of taxes.
And I'm still gonna be paying this much.
No one's in Minnesota. No one's really off the hook.
So it's the system, man.
Sure.
Trust me. But if we were to sit down with all of the friends we have here in the Twin Cities, the ones that own businesses, and we are talking with them one-on-one, if they all were honest with us to show us their yearly earnings, trust me, you see a lot of them that are not going to be paying anything. There are always loopholes in the tax system. If you give out a lot of charity, if you did this, those are all write-offs that you can just do and get away with. These are things that mostly rich people pay attention to. Do you think when they say someone like Elon is not paying taxes, it just mean he just got up and say, no, I'm not going to pay taxes? No. There are just loopholes in the tax system that they know how to manipulate. For example, don't liquidate your stocks. If you don't liquidate your stocks, you're not going to be paying any taxes. That's a law. You can go on stocks today. Don't liquidate them. You're not going to pay any taxes. That's how it works.
Those loopholes were created by billionaires in the first place.
And it should not be happening. So we have people even here in the Twin Cities that own stocks, that are investing in a lot of things like bonds. These things are not taxable. These people are moving millions from point A to B, and they're not paying anything.
Well, this is also the reason that Trump's administration basically wants to gut the IRS, just completely defund. The IRS has already been struggling over the past...
I'm going to need somebody to look into that.
Over the past decades.
I shouldn't be paying this much taxes. I'm sorry. They've been taking my money all year, and I still have to pay this much back. And I know people here that would figure out ways to escape taxes in these very Twin Cities. People that make way more than I can ever imagine.
Yeah, no, the loopholes are not an accident. I mean, they were put there by lawmakers who were working on behalf of very wealthy people to create, of corporate interest, to create loopholes to avoid them having to pay back into the economy that made them successful. That's what eventually creates massive inequality and the massive wealth gap, is that if those with the most are allowed to keep manipulating the system in their favor, it limits opportunities for everyone else and gives them more. And so back to the kind of the original question here, because I really want to say this to the audience, because so many of us as business people or as entrepreneurs want to look up to some of these people who have had great success. But I want to send this very clear message. Their success is at the detriment of yours. That's unfortunately the way that an oligarchical system works if there's no regulation, is the more power they get, the more they can suppress your ability to succeed. And so, look, we may all have respect for what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have been able to accomplish, but their entire agenda is to crush local and small business, because that all they're concerned about is their bottom line, and anybody who's successful in competing with them they see it as a threat. That's just how capitalist system is built, right? And it's good. What makes capitalism successful is when there is healthy competition. They're eliminating the ability for healthy competition. If they are allowed to take over the government and completely manipulate laws in their favor, then there's not going to be any chance. That's what's going to lead to, as I mentioned before, we're going to start looking like South Africa pretty soon if that's what goes on here.
Well, for me, to the audience, my problem is never with Elon or Jeff. My problem is the government that is letting it happen. If they are able to get close to the government and manipulate these laws, we should blame the government. I am going to be paying a lot of taxes this year. Does it feel bad? Yes. But is it necessary? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. However, I'm going to read the tax code next year and try as much as possible to pay less taxes. If the code is done, they're using it, I'm going to use it too. That's what's going to happen.
Nobody's arguing that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to use...
I'm not blaming no billionaire for trying to get richer.
We're all going to use the existing...
They should.
Existing policy.
Yeah. If the government is not going to review those tax codes and make sure everybody that owns something or have a brain cell should be able to pay it, and people are using charities, organizations, and not paying their own fair share, you know what?
Bottom line is...
I'm just going to get rich. Problem solved. I'm just going to get rich.
Well, they're going to make it more difficult for you. That's the bottom line here.
I invite them to try.
It doesn't mean... that's just the reality. I'm not saying you won't get rich, but that is just the reality. The more power that they are granted, the more they're going to...
My problem is who is granting them that power. That is the voting.
That obviously we can agree on. The government should be regulating and giving, making everybody play by the same rules. They're doing the opposite of that. They're making small business more difficult, and they're making immense corporations thrive. So that doesn't help anybody at the end of the day. And so that's why my answer would be billionaires are very harmful.
I'm just going
to business.
Like what I'm saying is this: at the end of the day, if I can't stop them, if I cannot do anything about it, and if the government, the people that we are electing, cannot do anything about it, I'm going to become one of them.
Well, if we think, no, all we can do is vote for the right people.
There you go.
That's what I was trying to get what we can do. Time. But the billionaires exist because the people in power, people in government, allowed them to, right? Yeah. So I mean, the power and wealth has continued to be consolidated through those means.
By them. Okay. Well, I think we are almost out of time again. And we still have so many questions. Yeah.
So many unanswered questions.
Yeah, we are out of time for this episode.
All right. Well, we'll have some great questions to follow up with.
Yeah.
On the next episode.
I know there's robotics question that I need to carry over for the next episode. It's very important.
To be continued.
Yeah,
going to keep all the audience in suspense as to whether we're all going to be married to robots in the future. I'm seeing
the possibility of that, to be honest. But hey,
my daughter might have a robot stepmom. I'm talking to my daughter off screen here. What do you think about a robot stepmom?
The way she just looked at you. You know what? Let's
Maybe you could program her. Maybe you could program her to give you treats and stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in on this episode today. Please communicate with us. Let us know what you think about all these topics we're having these great conversations about.
Absolutely. Great to talk with you all, and we'll talk with you again soon.
Yeah.